In recent weeks, it has been reported that the Russian military suffered heavy losses in February. The attacks of the armed forces near Vugledar and around Bakhmut became very real to them. Russian military losses were in the thousands, if we estimate them over the entire period of the winter offensive in these two directions. Near Bakhmut, a border guard reconnaissance patrol stormed the fortress of Wagner's mercenaries. The command of the armed forces of Ukraine said, while carrying out reconnaissance towards Bakhmut, Ukrainian Special Operations Forces operators noticed enemy movements, and they worked successfully against the enemy. As a result, at least 7 Russian invaders were destroyed. Among them, machine gunners, radio operators, observers with night vision devices, and assault groups. Having suffered losses, the enemy retreated. Military blogger and OSINT researcher noted that the Ukrainian armed forces repelled the Russian invaders in the northernmost part of Bakhmut, Ushakov Alley district. As a result, the road between Bakhmut and the village of Paraskovievka, which was almost surrounded by ABRI, was cleared. This was reported by the Telegram channel Donbas Operative. In turn, the domestic military expert Deep State in the report noted that the armed forces of Ukraine continued to push the invaders away from the road to Kostiantynivka, between Ivanivsky and Stepaki, and in some places fled. True, all experts indicated that the aggressor was advancing near the highway towards Sloviansk, but at the moment it did not threaten Bakhmut, and the road itself is no longer used for its intended purpose. But a soldier of the Ukrainian armed forces, who fought in Bakhmut and runs the Telegram channel Bakhmut Demon, not only wrote about our successful counterattack in Bakhmut and near the road to Kostiantynivka, but also claimed that the defense forces are still holding Krasnogora, near Paraskovievka. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin is planning a massive new strike in just a week to mark the first anniversary of the war. Ukraine's top spy chief has warned. The clear message came as he plans to mobilize up to 500,000 troops for an offensive, which could also include 1,800 tanks, 3,950 armored vehicles, 400 fighter jets, and 300 helicopters coming from Russia. It was believed that the Russian offensive would occur on 2 fronts, pushing south and east across the Donbass. Putin is desperate to gain control of the war after an invasion that he says will bring Ukraine into submission in days has been underway for almost a year. Serhiy Cherevity, spokesman for the Eastern Group of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, reported that 36 combat clashes occurred on the Bakhmut front. He noted that the Russians are, without a doubt, suffering heavy losses towards Bakhmut. They are constantly rotating forces and means, and new forces are being deployed. However, according to him, at the moment it is difficult to say whether Russia will acquire the ability to change something radically by February 24 on this front. As reported by Ukrinform, during the full-scale war against Ukraine, the defense forces destroyed more than 140,000 Russian troops, 3,296 enemy tanks, 6,517 armored fighting vehicles, 2,306 artillery systems, and many other equipment of the invaders. The Washington Post also wrote that while the Russians were advancing near Bakhmut, the Ukrainians were digging in reserve defensive structures. The Ukrainian artillery position closest to the heavy fighting for Bakhmut was hidden in a forest about 13,000 feet from the enemy. The soldiers had been holding out here for weeks, throwing 122mm shells at the Russians trying to outflank the town. If the Russians came even a little closer, the Ukrainians would have to move their guns back to avoid overhead fire, the platoon commander told the Washington Post. But even if the Russians do move forward, they won't go far, he said. Army earth-moving machines were digging new trenches on a ridge just a few hundred yards further west. A week ago, Analysts at the think tank Washington Institute for War Studies said that Russia's long-awaited major offensive in eastern Ukraine had begun, and it was Russia's first since August last year. Despite the massive Russian offensive against Ukrainian positions in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, the front line has not changed. Last week, National Guard aerial reconnaissance, in close collaboration with units of the armed forces of Ukraine, helped destroy 7 Russian tanks and 10 armored fighting vehicles. The day before, soldiers of the armed forces captured a large group of Russian fascist invaders during hostilities. Most of the prisoners fought as part of the 155th Marine Brigade of the Pacific Fleet of the Russian Federation. As you know, they were thrown into the Vugledar raid. There were also prisoners from the 72nd, 14th, and 40th Brigades of the Russian Armed Forces. One of the residents said he was from the 430th Regiment, assigned to the 155th Brigade. Meanwhile, 100 military personnel and 1 civilian were freed from Russian captivity during a prisoner exchange on February 16, according to the Coordination Headquarters for the Treatment of Prisoners of War. The majority of military personnel are from Mariupol, including 63 defenders of Azovstal. Among them were also soldiers defending Kherson and Kiev Oblast, as well as Bucha, Kherson, and Lyman. Many soldiers were injured when captured. The 46 released military prisoners of war belonged to the Navy, 29 to the State Border Service, 12 to the National Guard, 8 to the Ukrainian Armed Forces, and 5 to the Territorial Defense Forces, according to the Ministry of Reintegration of Provisionally Occupied Territories.